This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth, for competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty, for the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, Special Prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a great show ahead of us. And we're going to have the actress Morgan Brittany on. You might remember that she was Bobby Ewing's girlfriend during the Dallas series, that hit series that went on for 17 years, a new world indoor record for TV hit series. And she's going to talk about what's been going on in Hollywood with Harvey Weinstein, give us her perspective. Morgan's a very good friend. She actually supported me when I ran for the U.S. Senate in Florida. She came to Judicial Watch annual conventions. I've known her for a long time. A very fine person, I might add, a good Christian. But I want to talk first about a ghost from the past. A president, former President George W. Bush, who left this country, frankly, in my opinion, in ruins. And now he's risen again to now criticize, in fact, if not attack, the former president, the new president of the United States, Donald Trump. I'm getting confused here because it gets me so upset to listen to what Bush said yesterday. Let's roll that clip of his speech at the George W. Bush Foundation.
Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times, it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism. We've forgotten the dynamism that immigration has always brought to America. Bullying and prejudice in our public life sets a national tone, provides permission for cruelty and bigotry, and compromises the moral education of children. The only way to pass along civic values is to first live up to them.
Well, of course, that's an attack on President Trump. The Bush family hates President Trump. And President Trump had to take down the Bush family in the eyes of the American people to be elected president because his brother, Jeb W. Bush, who I know and I like him, he's a nice guy, he had amassed $100 million in campaign money from lobbyists and other special interests to try to win the presidential nomination in 2016. Now, the problem here, and I'm in Washington, D.C. today, and it reminds me of the whole problem here. I go around, it's a beautiful city, it's the fall, leaves are starting to turn. It's perhaps the most beautiful city in the world, rivals Paris at this time in the autumn, but it's rotting. It's rotting from within. It's rotting by the club of Washington, D.C., the Senate, the House, the courts, and fortunately the executive branch has been liberated by the Trump administration, but still it's being blocked at everything it wants to do by these evil forces of elitism, of establishment, and of frankly, just convenience. I mean, people go around here just stuffing money into their pockets, and that's the way it goes. Now, the Bush family doesn't need money, although I might add the father, H.W., was part of the Carlyle Group, which got $1 billion of investment from the Osama bin Laden family. So I guess maybe greed knows no bounds. In fact, it never has with the Clintons, and they're multimillionaires too. But let me get to the point with regard to the president, this former president, George W. Bush. He left the country in ruins. He created a war in Iraq that didn't need to be fought. There were no weapons of mass destruction. In fact, it would have been good if we had kept Iraq run by Saddam Hussein, because at least it would have been a buffer to Iran. The two of them could continue to fight and leave us alone. But over 5,000 people died during the Iraqi war and the later Afghan war, which was also triggered by George W. Bush. And in fact, hundreds of thousands have been maimed, and a suicide of about one a day. Maybe it's even more than that, by GIs who suffer from PTSD. for killing themselves. Now, if that's not enough, he left the economy in ruins. We had a crash in 2008. He didn't know what was going to go. He didn't know what was going on. And frankly, maybe his most crowning moment was when he dodged a shoe in Baghdad that was thrown at him. At least he missed it. At least he was in shape. But, frankly, George W. Bush, as president of the United States, was a joke. It was a bad joke. The guy wasn't in control. His government was being run by the likes of Karl Rove, a very corrupt lobbyist, the equivalent of James Carville on the Democrat side, and others. And frankly, he should not be criticizing President Trump, as much as he may have enmity or hatred for President Trump for bringing down his brother Jeb during the last presidential election period. And I have to take issue with that. I have to speak out because, frankly, I think that George W. Bush and Barack Obama were the two worst presidents of my lifetime, that they're the ones that created the conditions for Barack Obama to be elected, and we know what happened after that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, the racial division that he sowed, the weakness militarily, the rise of North Korea, the rise of Iran, you name it. I mean, this country is on its knees right now. And the last thing we need to do is to bring down President Trump and not give him a chance to succeed, and to equate nationalism with nativism. I don't even think George W. Bush knows what nativism is. Maybe he thinks that's running around beating a tom-tom somewhere in some jungle. I don't know. But this guy just doesn't have a grip. And to talk about free trade, I'm a free trader too, but free trade does not come without a price. And people have to play by international rules of conduct, not the way China has played and not the way some other countries have played. And then to play off the immigration, that issue, illegal immigration. I'm pro-immigration myself. I'm the grandson of immigrants from the Ukraine, from Poland, and from Lithuania. We appreciate that. I once gave a conference on C-SPAN years ago promoting immigration, but it has to be legal. And that was a cheap shot as well. So I don't need to repeat this clip, but I got to tell you something. The time of the Bush family is over. This elitism, this special privilege, this so-called American nobility, that we can do no wrong, that we are above everybody else, that we'll make the decisions for the American people, and we know what's best. That's over. George W. Bush, go back and start painting pictures. Maybe do, coloring graphs or something, or whatever you need to take to keep your mind off of this, because, frankly, you're not contributing to anything. And on the same day that George W. Bush was attacking President Trump, so too was President Obama, former President Obama, thank God. So too was former Attorney General Eric Holder, and so too was this congressman from Florida, Frederica Wilson. And we'll talk about that. But here's the segue for the current discourse in this first segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. As everyone's attacking President Trump, the world is going up in flames. I mean, California is literally going up in flames, and don't think that isn't terrorism out there. In fact, Spain and Portugal were going up in flames earlier in the week, and at least the governments there had the honesty to tell the American people that it was terrorism. Here, we cover it up because no one wants to be blamed inside of the Department of Homeland Security or anywhere else. And then we've got North Korea on the horizon, threatening us daily with nuclear extinction. It just takes one atom bomb, an EMT attack, detonated over our atmosphere, and they now have the missiles to do it, to kill 90% of the people in this country within a year, as our power grid will go right down the drain. So this is not the time for President Bush W., I might add, to reassert himself. And I doubt, frankly, he even wrote the speech. I mean, it's questionable whether he's even literate. I mean, he got into Yale thanks to his daddy's pull. Everything that happened, and you can watch the movie W by Oliver Stone, and Oliver Stone's not always wrong, even if he is a communist, is that everything was handed to him on a silver platter. And then he got to be president. They pushed him to that, and he basically destroyed the country before he left. And what did we get? We got somebody like Barack Obama, someone who doesn't act as if he's a Christian. He acts as if he's his Muslim heritage. And that created a lot of the problems. And someone who didn't understand the economy, someone who didn't understand how the world works, appeased everybody. And now we've got our back up against a wall. So that's my opening monologue. I've got 2 minutes left here, but let me just conclude by saying, and this will be a segue into our next piece, is that as President Trump is being attacked, we have bogus investigations going on by Special Counsel Robert Mueller to try to destroy him. We've got people in the U.S. Senate, like John McCain, who also wanted to destroy President Trump because President Trump criticized him during the presidential election period as well. And we've got Democrats on the other side that have their knives sharpened. So for this president, former president, George W. Bush, to go out and try to undermine the will of the people, to undercut President Trump, to give a clarion call to the establishment and the elitism in Washington and around this country to take this president down. It's like he's telegraphing that President Trump should be impeached. That's what he's doing. It's not just destructive of this country. It's low class. And frankly, George W. Bush, go back to the ash heap of history where you belong. And if you want to pal around with the Clintons, which he does, and if you want to pal around with Barack Obama, which he also does, go do it somewhere else. Don't do it in this country. Take a trip. Go overseas. Go to Europe. They'll like what you have to say. Don't stay here. And I'm sorry if this is strong, but frankly, to listen to this idiot rise up from the dead, the political dead, is disgusting. Now, I want you to go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. See what we're doing. Contribute to our cause, because there is no Republican Party anymore. There is no Democratic Party anymore in terms of any integrity. We don't have anything going on in Congress. That's a complete waste. Our courts are infected by leftist judges who make rulings not on the law but on their own personal predilections. And you need a strong group like Freedom Watch to represent your interests. Please join our cause. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. Please contribute. We are your Justice Department. We're doing what we can within the bounds of the law and with the bounds of ethics, and also our education, because I tell it like it is. And frankly, I think I'm the only one that really goes to the edge in telling it like it is. And I'll accept the consequences for that. But I need your help. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, get up to speed, sign up for our newsletters, see what we do, and join our Gideon's Army. I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Now, as former President Bush is trying to take down President Trump, we have another individual by the name of Robert Mueller who's doing a good job of doing that as well with his special counsel investigation of so-called Russian collusion. We've learned just in the last few days that a scandal called Uranium One, where 20% of the United States uranium reserves was handed over to Russia thanks to bribery to the Clinton Foundation and to the Clintons themselves, and I might add, while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, that, of course, that's of no interest to Mueller, and it's of no interest, frankly, to anyone else. I don't know why it's not of any interest to the current Justice Department under Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and you've heard me talk about Sessions before. In fact, I have a column coming out Friday, last Friday, at WND.com, and you can also see it on our website at freedomwatchusa.org, talking about the cowardice of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And I had hoped that he would be a strong man. But there's been an investigation apparently percolating at the Justice Department of what happened with uranium sale to Russia, which Clinton greased. Both Clintons greased it, Bill and Hill. And he's doing nothing about it. Yet he's allowing Mueller to destroy the President of the United States because he recused himself when he was also accused of colluding with the Russians. He recused himself, and the decision to appoint Mueller went to the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who's a Democrat, former U.S. attorney from Maryland, appointed by Obama, someone who, not coincidentally, was supposed to be investigating Uranium One. So he has a conflict of interest as well, and he buried it. So this is what we're dealing with right now in Washington, D.C., a three-ring circus, all designed to bring President Trump down, with him having knives stabbed in his back by his own people. And that's because President Trump wants to break up the establishment, wants to break up the money train, wants to break up the clubbiness here in Washington, D.C. Again, a beautiful city, maybe the most beautiful city in the world, but it's corrupt to the core and it's rotting from within. It's like ancient Rome. That was beautiful, too. and it came crashing down thanks to the barbarians, thanks to the Huns. And I'm not talking about calling your wife Hun. I'm talking about Attila the Hun. There's a joke about that, by the way. What did Attila the wife's Hun say to him when dinner was ready? It's ready, Hun. Well, I'll tell you something. We're not ready to be destroyed in this country. And the destruction of a dinner served up by the Democrats, served up by the Republican Trump haters, served up by the leftist judges on the courts. We're not ready to eat that meal just yet because we're going to be fighting back. So take it all in context and read that column that I wrote at WND.com and freedomwatchusa.org. Read the column. It's going to be entitled Sessions Furthers Corruption at the FBI and Department of Justice by doing nothing, by abdicating his role and not being Attorney General and putting his head in the sand to save his own skin because he's under investigation as well. The country is in dire strait when you don't have a Justice Department that will do its job. And I was a former prosecutor of the Justice Department and defense lawyer. I helped break up AT&T. I did other things. That was my once proud alma mater. But now we are left defenseless, and that's why you need to support Freedom Watch, because we are now your Justice Department. We don't have the powers that they have, but we're doing everything we can to bring about ethics and morality to our system. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. I just want to talk briefly about what's been going on with this congressman from Florida. You know, I'm from Florida, and I'm really embarrassed, and I think it's a disgrace. Her name is Frederica Wilson. She goes around with a cowboy hat. Gee, I didn't know they wore cowboy hats in Florida. I'm going to call her Cowgirl Fred. But according to Frederica Wilson, who sees racism around every corner, I guess that's a racist comment. And it looks like the president was set up recently with this call that he made to a Navy SEAL who died in Niger recently. And he's being lambasted by Frederica Wilson. He's being lambasted by the leftist media. He's being vilified for doing his job and simply saying to her, apparently, gee, you know, your husband's a hero. We revere the fact that he's a hero. We pray for him. He was a brave man. He knew what he was getting into. Now, what's wrong with saying he knew what he was getting into? I mean, if you don't know what you're getting into, I mean, get off this earth, my God. And military people know what can happen to them when they go overseas. I know what can happen to me as a lawyer who sticks my neck out all the time. I used to have security at Judicial Watch. I was being threatened. So this is not unusual. And this woman, who is part of this whole radical black movement, now most black people are really good people, and they stand up for America. I mean, of course, the NFL players don't. But these people are lowlives, you know, and let's call it like it is. It's time that we push back because everybody in this country should be equal. Nobody has more rights than anybody else. And every time that you're criticized, you can't play the race card. We'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with a very good friend and someone who I admire a great deal, Morgan Brittany. She was the star, as I said earlier in the show, of Dallas. She was Bobby Ewing's girlfriend, and she's a really sweet person, despite the fact that she shot him towards the end. But I think he came back to life, didn't he, Morgan? I don't know.
Yeah, he did. I ran him over with a car, and then it was all a dream, and he came back.
Yeah,
so,
I think you missed him.
That's Hollywood, right?
I once had a client in Washington, D.C. I was taking cases from the court who tried to shoot somebody at point-blank range and missed. Right? So I won't get into the rest of it. It's attorney-client privilege.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's early on in my career. But let's talk about something which is really serious, because you have experience in Hollywood. I mean, you're a very famous actress. You're very beautiful. Obviously, because of that, you're susceptible to the Harvey Weinsteins. I don't know if you ever had any contact with him or not. But I wanted to get your take on what's been going on with this scandal, because it seems to be growing, and growing. Obviously, Gloria Allred is now involved. Her daughter was Lisa Bloom. I don't fault Gloria for that. Actually, I'm friendly with Gloria, even though we're politically different. But it seems to me like Harvey Weinstein is being made a poster boy for all of Hollywood. And I want to get your take as to whether that's accurate or not.
Well, I'll tell you something, Larry. I was in the business for 50 years. I started in the 1950s, and I worked all the way through up until the time I just couldn't take it anymore. And this is nothing new. These people are coming out acting shocked. It's sort of like the Casablanca scene where the guy goes, I'm shocked that gambling is going on here, when he knew it all the time. Everybody in this business, ever since I was a little girl, I could see what was going on. This always happened. You knew it always happened. It was it was basically the game that everybody played. As I grew up in the business, I knew what I would do and what I would not do. And when I was propositioned or somebody, said, look, if you want this role, you're going to have to do this. Through an agent to represent you, a director, a producer, whomever, you either went for it, which many girls did, or you walked out the door and said, no, sorry, not going to do it. That's the way it was. I complained many times to Screen Actors Guild and said in the 70s and said, hey, you know what? There's a bad guy over here at Warner Brothers. You guys, you need to know this. He propositions actresses. Don't send anybody or heads up on this. And their reaction to me basically was, oh, honey, it's just the way the business is. You're an actor, you're this, you're going to have to deal with it. Well, that was their attitude. So everybody, had a blind eye to this thing for decades. And now everybody is now coming out and talking about Harvey. Yes, Harvey's a bad guy. Harvey was doing this for years. Everyone in Hollywood knew that Harvey was doing this. But he's not the only one. There's many, Larry, many of them that are being silent right now and probably hiding under their desks somewhere because they don't want to be outed as, predators or whatever they've done.
Well, go on, Morgan. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, the thing that I'm more concerned about, these women knew what they were getting into. And basically many of them worked for Harvey after he did this stuff to them. So you kind of have to look at it like, okay, why did they go back and do a movie? Because they wanted the fame and fortune. That's the bottom line. And a lot of women take abuse to get the rewards. Sorry to say it, but it's true. I walked out of the office. I never won an Academy Award. I never got to the fame that some of these women got. So it's a bad thing. It's a horrible thing. It should never happen. But you know what? You got to just say no.
Well, it's not only doing a movie, as you're saying. Morgan, you're a great actress, okay? You could have won an Academy Award.
Well, thank you.
But you wouldn't play the game with Harvey. I call him Hurricane Harvey, okay?
Yeah, right.
Right. Hurricane Harvey destroyed Texas, and now he's destroying Hollywood. Well, hopefully that.
Hey, that's it.
Hopefully that part of Texas of Hollywood, and you of course know Dallas, so that's in Texas. But the point being is that it's not just, and you know this, getting a movie role, but then the studios have to back you and promote you and lobby you to get a Golden Globe or Academy Award, and then further your next movie, you see, because you'll be cut off. And if you only do one movie, that's not great for your career. You got to keep doing movies and television and stuff like that. So it's a never-ending proposition, no pun intended, of course. Right.
And it doesn't just happen to women. It happens to men as well. I mean, there's young guys, young actors that have to deal with this all the time as well. But here's the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about in Hollywood, and that's what they do to the children, the child actors in Hollywood. The abuse that goes on there, Larry, is unbelievable. And Paul Peterson and I have fought this for years. Paul has an organization called A Minor Consideration where he tries to protect children within the industry Because what goes on, the pedophiles in this industry that prey on young children, they are all over the place. They throw parties. They have the kids come over. They're around 12, 13, 14 years old, and it is awful. Corey Feldman has come out about this, but it's very difficult to name names. It's very, very difficult because you can get sued for that. I don't know. You would know more about this than I do. But growing up in the business, I know how children are treated. And many, many times they will say, hey, if the parent thinks it's okay or the parent allows this, then we can do whatever we want. And that's the attitude that the union had as well. They said, hey, we can't tell the parent. If they want their kid to do it, it's fine. Back in the old days, in the 50s and 60s, that we used to have teachers, welfare workers on set. And if anything was out of the ordinary or anybody said a four-letter word on the sound stage, that teacher would yank that kid and say, okay, we're not dealing with this. If you did anything that was remotely, abusive to a child, they would be right there, and they watched out for you. I was very lucky to be a child actor back in those days. But now it's gotten so bad. It's like with Dakota Fanning on Hound Dog, where she did basically a nude rape scene at 12. Got away with it. The studio got away with it because they shot it in North Carolina. There was a huge uproar about this. But no one does anything about the abuses of these children. And this, I think, is going to blow up at some point. I truly believe it.
It's got to.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's got to. And, Hollywood is a very important aspect of our social fabric. I spend a lot of time in L.A. out there. I've been trying to do entertainment projects for years. I actually sold my life rights to 20th Century Fox at one time. We were going to do a TV series. But
I remember that.
And I'm still working on that. And I believe that it's the best way to educate the American people. So we have to clean it up, and we have to use it positively. And there are groups of conservatives out there that are trying to do that, but they're scared because, and they haven't heard any conservatives, hardly except for you, who's talked about this because of the potential retaliation.
Oh, yeah.
In Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Some of our very good friends have been silent, during this time period. And it's a frightening thing what we face. But you're not a homophobe, and I'm not a homophobe either. We all have many gay friends. They're nice people and this and that. But we're not talking about the sexual harassment towards gay people, from gay people. And I'm sure there's a lot of that in Hollywood, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's an untold story as well. I mean, the thing that is it's so aggravating is that it paints the entire entertainment community with this dark brush. It paints everybody as bad. And I've got to say, there are some good producers and directors and actors out there that do things the right way. They want to put out entertainment. They want to put out good product. But because of all the bad, they're getting overshadowed. And it's a horrible thing. I mean, we need to put entertainment back into the entertainment business because that's what it is.
And we need to take politics out of it to some extent. I mean, it's kind of like the football players. If you want to do your political thing, don't do it when someone has to pay $600 to take their family to an NFL game where they expect to be treated with respect and not have our country trashed. Go do it on Facebook. Go do it, give a press conference at the Beverly Hills Hotel or wherever you want to do it, but not there. And when you see all these actors and actresses, at the Academy Awards, at the Golden Globes, at the Emmys, trashing Trump, trashing anybody who believes in Trump, it's become anybody who believes in him as my enemy as well as Trump himself. That also destroys Hollywood. And I want to, throw this one out, too. It's just this week, Chelsea Handler, in my opinion, one of the most low-class, disgusting people in Hollywood, who has a foul mouth, who brags about being an alcoholic. You name it. I mean, she's written books about how much she drinks, says that she's leaving her show because she wants to become an activist. Now, I suspect she was fired from her show because even this mainstream network can't take it anymore. Probably there was so much blowback. But I want to get your thoughts on people like Chelsea Handler. You don't have to be as strong as I am in that regard. But I'm disgusted by the whole thing, and it never ends.
They're shooting themselves in the foot here because all these celebrities that come out don't understand that what they're doing is, I'm not in the business anymore. I can speak out for conservative values because I'm not turning off half my audience. When I was an actress on Dallas, nobody knew my political opinions. I never spoke out about anything because I respected the other half of the audience. Even though I disagreed with them, I did not go out and get on a soapbox and say, you know what, I don't need you people. I wouldn't do that. Now you have Jimmy Kimmel coming out and saying, I don't care if they don't watch me. Well, guess what? That's half of this country that you're alienating. I don't understand what these people are doing. I don't understand why the networks are not coming down on them saying, hey, you know what? You can't do this. This is ridiculous. You're turning off half of our ratings here. This means money to us. In Hollywood, money means everything to them. So it baffles me why they're not clamping down on these people and saying, just keep your views to yourself. You know what?
Well, I'll tell you why Jimmy Kimmel did it, in my opinion. I've followed him in the past. You can go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. He gave one of the funniest opening monologues to a White House Correspondents' Dinner I've ever seen. And it was very even-handed. I don't think that Jimmy Kimmel is really that far left, but Jimmy Kimmel saw the ratings that Colbert was getting, and he was losing audience. So he felt he had to one-up it. They're all competing because trashing Trump grabs you a large audience these days. And, it's cheap. It's whore-like, frankly.
Yep.
And I'm very disappointed in Jimmy Kimmel because I know people that know Jimmy Kimmel, and I don't think he's really that way. But, this is the age we live in today.
It's just very sad because, so many people that I know, they hear comments like that and they go, well, I'm not watching that anymore. Forget it. If they think that, because when they trash Donald Trump, they trash his voters. They trash the people. What they're doing is they're saying, you are deplorable, like Hillary Clinton said. We don't like you because you voted for him. Why should we pay money to go and see their movies or go and watch their shows? Why should we do that to people who hate us?
You're right, Morgan. We have about 30 seconds left here, but you just did the segue to Hillary Clinton. Of course, who was the big contributor to Hillary Clinton? Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein, yeah.
Birds of a feather flock together.
You better believe it. And now, don't you think, Larry, that he was paying for a pardon in the future?
Well, ironically, I think Hillary may have been the only woman he ever came into contact with that he did not sexually harass. But anyway, Morgan, I want to bring you back later. I hope we can co-host a show together someday because you're great, and thank you very much.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm going to end this show talking about something I've talked about a lot in the past, and that's the case of Cliven Bundy, the criminal prosecution of Cliven Bundy, which is going to trial currently on October 30th of this year. It's going to last 3 to 4 months. The government says it's going to put on its witnesses, taking at least 2, perhaps more than that, months. And, of course, you have currently 7 defendants, so it'll probably be 3 to 4 months before it's concluded. Now, this is a very important trial. I've told you about this before. But going back to the years leading up to 1776 in this country, we had as despot as king, King George III. Now, I'm in Washington today. He actually founded Georgetown. It's a nice place, but not because of him. It just happens to be nice geographically. The architecture's nice. People are semi-nice. It's Washington, D.C. Of course, they say if you want a friend in Washington, D.C., get a dog. I have a dog, as a matter of fact, and he's my best friend. I should say she, okay? I'm not getting confused. But to get back to the Bundy story is very, very important because King George III, asserting himself over the colonies, would basically rape them in terms of what they owned with high taxes. The soldiers of the crown would break into people's homes, businesses. They would steal stuff. They would assault them. They would kill them. And they took the justice system away from the colonies. That was King George, and brought it back to the court of King James in London. So you couldn't even try these offenders of King George in the colonies. And, of course, that led to a revolution. And on 1776, and then around July 4th in my native city of Philadelphia, the Founding Fathers signed the Declaration of Independence and created a new free nation, which was a beacon to the world. Now, fast forward over 200 and some years to Cliven Bundy. Cliven Bundy's family has ranched the land in Nevada for over 150 years, more than half the existence of this country. His grandfather, Levitt, probably of Jewish origin, interestingly enough, because Mormons are very close to Jewish people. They're one of the tribes of Israel. He started it. And lo and behold, along came this evil senator by the name of Harry Reid. We could do a cartoon book about this. We know how evil Reid was, how vicious he was, how low class he was. And he and his son Rory tried to take the land away from Cliven Bundy. And to do that, he appointed his hand-picked guy to run the Bureau of Land Management during the Obama administration, a guy named Neil Cornyn, who sent in BLM, I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter, although they acted like that, Bureau of Land Management goons, to threaten the lives of the Bundy family, to assault his sister Margaret, Cliven's sister, threw her to the ground violently, tased his two sons, and kicked his dog also violently and harmed the dog, and then secretly killed cattle and buried them in mass graves, all to drive Cliven off the land. And if that wasn't enough, at the end of the Obama administration, our former president nationalized Cliven's ranch. It's now called the Butte National Land Monument. Now, Cliven stood up to that, and peaceful protesters came, and they were armed because they saw how the Bundy family was being assaulted, how it was being harmed. They saw the violence that was occurring. The Bundy family was even threatened with death by some of the agents of BLM. And they came to their defense. And, of course, 2 years later, under the Obama administration and under Loretta Lynch, former Attorney General, Cliven Bundy and 18 others were indicted for alleged conspiracy to obstruct justice, to threaten government agents, and the like. Well, they didn't harm a hair on the head of any government agent. They were exercising their First and Second Amendment rights. In fact, they were doing it peacefully. And Obama couldn't take it because Cliven made reference to the plight of his family like the reference he made to the plight of the Negro in the Old South. He didn't mean any disrespect by that. Martin Luther King used to call himself a Negro and his people a Negro. But Obama took offense, and it's getting back to this, you can't say anything anymore unless you're a racist. Well, it's going to trial, and if Cliven doesn't win this case, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions has refused to review it because he's saving his own skin, because he's been called a racist, he's shying away, all the American people will lose. So I call your attention to a website, ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. Go there. Contribute to the cause. Follow what we're doing, because if we don't win this, we're back to where we were in 1776 before we declared independence in our native city, my native city of Philadelphia. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up for our newsletters. I'll be back next week with another hard-hitting version of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.